No tipping, affordable healthcare, and quality meals for less than $10. Ever wonder why Japan offers a better quality of life despite lower wages? Today I'm going to be talking all about it. After living in Toronto for 4 years and coming back to Tokyo, I've definitely experienced the stark contrast between the quality of life in here and back in Canada. If this is your first time seeing me, hi, my name is Emmy. I was born and raised in Tokyo, Japan, and on this channel I try to bring the authentic side of Japan from a unique Canadian perspective. So I was born and raised in Tokyo, however I went to study abroad in Toronto from 2021 basically up till 2024. Over those 3.5 years, I've definitely seen how Toronto has changed. I definitely experienced it becoming even more expensive to live. And people always say like, isn't Tokyo also expensive to live in? And yes, to some extent it is a major city, so therefore it is expensive to live in. But when I first handily experienced life in Toronto, it was completely different to how I feel right now. Despite a higher minimum wage in Canada, I always felt financial pressure and struggle, whereas in Japan here I feel a lot more stress-free. And don't get me wrong, a lot of that has to do with me being able to live rent-free. But even in Canada, my rent was being taken care of. Even though rent was covered, I always somehow felt really stressed out. I don't know, and I really felt like it limited me from doing the things that I wanted to do most of the time. Before I get into this video, I will acknowledge that Japan's work culture, which is a huge part of, quality of life, still has a lot of challenges on its own. But despite that, the overall quality of life still stands out. And throughout this video, I'd like to mention that I will be creating a comparison between living in Japan versus Canada, just because that's sort of my experience and I would like to share that with you guys. Number one point, the financial realities. Now, I'd like to first start off by talking about the average salaries as well as cost of living in Japan and in Canada, specifically Toronto and Tokyo. So according to current data, to live comfortably in Toronto, you would need an annual salary of anywhere between 90,000 to 100,000 Canadian dollars. Some sources suggest that you would need a minimum of 73,000 to just cover basic living expenses. Now, these are some of the typical expenses for a single professional living in Toronto. The most expensive thing in Toronto, I would say, is the rent. So average rent for a one-bedroom apartment in Toronto is $23.50, anywhere around that. Groceries, 400 Canadian dollars per month. Again, this is for a single person. Transportation, in my opinion, if you're just taking the TTC, is not as expensive as taking public transportation in Tokyo. However, I will say it's around $128 for a monthly Presto Pass. And dining out, which is also really expensive in Toronto, I'd say around 20 to 30 with tips on top of that, so maybe even more. Now for Tokyo, Japan, average monthly salary is around 500 to 576,000 yen. Now a comfortable living expense for a single professional in Tokyo is around 200,000 yen. Now the national average rent for a one bedroom is 50 to 70,000 yen, whereas in Tokyo, which is obviously the most expensive city in Japan, is anywhere from 80 to 100,000 yen for a one bedroom. Now typical expenses are groceries, obviously depends on the person and lifestyle, but maybe 30,000 yen per month. Dining out is really cheap, I'd say 1,000 to 1,500 relatively per meal. Now for transportations, there's comprehensive pass options for anywhere from 10,000 to 15,000 yen. So with all the numbers that I just splatted out and maybe the calculations that I showed, hopefully with a bunch of sound effects and whatnot, Canada's living costs are approximately 31% higher than Japan when excluding rent and 48% higher when rent is included. Now this comes to show that Japan offers more value for money despite lower wages. Ever since coming back home to Japan, I've definitely experienced being able to afford more services that I wasn't able to in Canada. One of them particularly being laser hair removal treatment. Anyone who lives in North America, guys, tell me why it's so expensive. I received a price quota of $70 for just getting one session done on my belly button area, literally this small. Whereas now one session of laser hair removal treatment for literally over 5 body parts costs 13,000 yen, which is 125 Canadian. One thing that really stands out to me is grocery shopping. Every time I went grocery shopping in Canada, it really made me anxious just because of the price tags. But not only that, I didn't feel like I was getting fresh produce and good quality produce. You can tell the quality of the eggs here, fruits, vegetables, literally everything. Not only are they fresh in Japan, but they're significantly cheaper. There are so many more options for affordable meals as well as lifestyle products. For example, when I'm at my work and I need a quick little bite, I can easily just go to the convenience store and grab something to eat. Whereas in Canada, it would either be fast food because there's honestly nothing else that you can get at the convenience store, or I would have to pack my own lunch. Yeah, I guess the constant financial anxiety made it really hard for me to enjoy life a lot of the times in Canada. And a big reason why I decided to move back is because I genuinely could not imagine being able to afford life in Canada. I taught myself, you know, doing my own nails. I mean, look at my nails right now. Cute. I definitely felt like I had to restrict my own spending. After finally feeling like I've started to settle down in Tokyo, as it's been a couple months now, despite having lower wages, I'm able to enjoy everyday activities without stress, and that's what is really comforting to me about living here. I get to indulge in simple joys like, you know, going to Daiso or looking forward to actually shopping, because I also feel like shopping in Toronto sucks. Like, the only thing available for you is Garage, Aritzia, and like the basic 5 stores that's out there, like Zara, for example. In Tokyo, like, you come out, the world is your oyster. There's unlimited stores. Like, you'll be walking around the streets and alleyways and discovering new stores every day. And in Toronto, I never got that, you know? So getting to enjoy little things like that as well really adds to the quality of life that I'm able to enjoy and reap the benefits of living here. Another thing I'd like to talk about is healthcare. Now, in Canada, the government offers free healthcare for everyone, which is great, obviously. But I have personally experienced, you know, the healthcare in Canada, and let me just say, I have never been so shocked until I experienced having to book, or not even having to book, having to wait 2 months to wait for specialized care. But not only that, in order to see a specialized doctor in the first place, you need to be referred to one. Mind you, 2 months is 1/6 of a year. If I'm waiting that long to see a specialized doctor when I am experiencing something, I feel like by that time I see a doctor, the problem has exacerbated in so many ways. You know what I mean? The requirement for referrals adds unnecessary delays. It's just tedious. I personally was referred to a specialized doctor while I was in Canada, and I did have to wait 2 months. However, upon the date of the appointment that I was supposed to have, I was supposed to receive a phone call. I initially missed it, but I called back 2 minutes after I received it, called back multiple times, and I never received a call back. No one answered the phone, and I was like, great. There was literally no point in me even booking this appointment. That's the type of healthcare that I received. There was one time where I was genuinely dying. I thought I was genuinely dying. It was worse than anything that I ever experienced. My fever lasted for like a week at this point. I finally had the energy to go to the doctor, and I waited an hour, and all they told me was to take a Tylenol or an Advil. That's all they told me. You would not receive that type of healthcare in Japan. In Japan, I have access to an area of specialized doctors without a referral. Obviously, this comes with much shorter wait times. You don't need to wait months. The most you're waiting for is like an hour or 2. And not only that, healthcare costs are actually very surprisingly low in Japan. It's around 3,000 to 5,000, at most 5,000 yen for a consultation, depending on the service. I would like to mention that Japan's healthcare system does cover most healthcare expenses. Usually when I go to a specialized doctor, I usually only pay around 1,000 yen actually. So I believe that healthcare, seeing the differences between healthcare in Japan and experiencing healthcare in Canada, I definitely do feel like I value healthcare that is provided in Japan, and definitely contributes a peace of mind knowing that, you know, no matter what happens to my body, that I can rely on going somewhere to be taken care of instead of feeling scared and anxious. Third thing I like to talk about is the daily life conveniences in Japan. Now, everyone and their mothers love convenience stores in Japan. That's typically what you see tourists do first thing when they land, is go to a convenience store and just grab a bunch of stuff. Half the time during my break at work, I usually go to the convenience store to grab some bites or drinks. They're open 24/7, and they don't just offer, you know, food and drinks. They offer services as well. You can print stuff, you can ship stuff, you can buy socks, you have skincare, you have all these things available. It's just amazing. You could literally live there if you wanted to. One thing I really like about convenience stores is warm drinks. In Canada, you cannot find warm drinks unless you go to like a cafe or an establishment. Not only that, they offer warm drinks in vending machines as well. So it's really nice in the cold months. I feel like Toronto should implement this because Toronto's so cold, you know? Like, another daily life convenience in Japan is obviously transportation, the most obvious one. Not only Tokyo, but Japan in general just has a comprehensive train and bus system that literally takes you almost anywhere that you want to in the country. When I was living in Toronto, I was so shocked to only see pretty much 2 train lines, and it didn't even cover like Scarborough. It literally just covered like line 1s and 2. Public transportation in Japan is super reliable. They're always on time. They're always clean. And it explains why it's the main mode of transportation for basically everyone in Tokyo. Another daily convenience in Japan, I would say, is safety and police boxes, which are also called koban. Koban is essentially a police box. It's not a police station, but it's a little mini box with police officers present. You'll find a lot of these honestly scattered everywhere throughout Tokyo. I don't know about outside Tokyo, but in Tokyo especially, you'll see a lot of these scattered throughout the city. The presence of these kobans provide a sense of security, and you'll have access to getting assistance or any help if there is needed as well. Another one of my favorite daily conveniences in Japan is obviously affordable meals. Obviously the meals are cheap. Anywhere from 1,000 yen, you can literally have a meal if you want to. But tipping, not having to tip, is just really just so great. Ever since moving back, I will say I have enjoyed eating out so much more. I don't feel stressed out, paying for a meal. I love eating here, guys. It's just... Other than that, I've definitely been experiencing other simple joys. I love shopping around Tokyo. Being able to have access to such nice products and innovative things around me is just so nice to experience and have. It really contributes to a sense of satisfaction and enjoyment in just everyday life. Now, aside from all of these things that I definitely do enjoy about Japan, I will acknowledge the downside of quality of life in Japan, which is obviously work culture. Now, the traditional Japanese work culture consists of long hours, not being able to leave before your boss leaves, a lot of overtime that is unpaid. Now, I will say that it has gotten better with more foreign companies emerging in Tokyo. However, there are still a lot of black companies, and if you want to know more about work culture in Japan, I do have a video on this. Now, obviously, a lack of work-life balance is super prevalent in Japan, and that continues to be a challenge, and that's why it contributes to our decreasing population rate as well. Now, despite all of this, I do think that it's getting better. Like I mentioned, I do have friends that work corporate in Japan, and they have really great work-life balances, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they are working in an international company. Now, another thing I do want to delve into a little bit is social life and connectedness in Japan. Now, in terms of social integration, Japan can feel isolating for a lot of people. Obviously, hugging is not part of a cultural norm when greeting people, and little things like that, I definitely feel like it contributes to the isolating feeling that a lot of us have and the lack of connectedness. It's also not very normalized necessarily to really open up about your emotions in Japan. I think people should prioritize work a little less, now make it their entire life, going to more social events and networking opportunities outside of work, something to do for fun. I'm still trying to navigate my social life in Japan just because I definitely feel like I had to start over when moving here, and a lot of my friends moving abroad. Now, to wrap things up, I want to say that despite obvious challenges that are prevalent in Japan, like any other country that has their own problems as well, I will say that through my experiences, I definitely do feel like quality of life is a lot better in Japan, and what Japan offers overall, I didn't feel like I could get in Canada, for example. I do want to acknowledge the importance of individual preferences depending on countries and what people value. The things I value may be different than to what you value, and I want to share sort of my experiences from growing up here, living here, coming back here, as well as living in Toronto. And these are two major cities in the world, and how that was like for me. Obviously, people mention, the stark contrast between living wages and stuff like that, but despite earning less here, I do feel an ease of mind, and that's something that I would rather have rather than a bigger paycheck at the end of the day. A video that inspired this video today is this guy. I don't know what the title is, but I will insert it somewhere here and place a link below. But it was this guy that used to earn 6 figures living in New York City, and he was doing really well for himself, but he decided to up and go and move to Thailand, in which he was earning significantly less than he was in New York City. But the quality of life that he was having in Thailand was far more than what he was having in New York City. And that to me speaks volumes, right? I think a lot of people are noticing that recently as well. A lot of people are wanting to, earn USD but live in Asia, for example. And that really speaks volumes, and that's sort of why I wanted to talk about this today. But yeah, I want to know what you guys think as well. Do you live in Asia? Do you live in North America? Have you ever thought about moving to Asia? Describe your quality of life, where you live. But yeah, if you watched this far, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.